The home and away opponents for the Miami Dolphins have been set for the 2025 season. The full schedule comes out 1 week from today on May 14th, but we're going to give you everything that you need to know about the upcoming season. We're going to give you our initial predictions, and I want you to comment down below in the chat, what do you think the Dolphins' record will be based on these home and away matchups? Of course, information will continue to come in, which might change your opinions, but at least what is your initial gut reaction? Hi, everybody. This is MetropoliFins. We are YouTube's smallest New York Mets and Miami Dolphins channel. My name is Craig, and we're going to be doing a deep dive breakdown on this Miami Dolphins home and away games for the season and what this means. What is the chances of the Dolphins making the playoffs or even being competitive this year? Obviously, a lot of the personnel choices that the Dolphins are going to be undertaking will play a big part into this. Who wins different battles for positions, any other free agents that the Dolphins sign, trades that they pull off, how the rookies that were just drafted play out. So there's a whole bunch of things. So we're going very much off of gut reaction. I'm going to say that a lot of this opinion is going to be based off of assuming there's not any sort of drastic change from team to team from last year to this year. Some of you who might have more insights into other teams might vary differently on my opinions, and that's perfectly fine as well. And some of my opinions will change as to like when exactly we're going to play some of these games too, especially when you get into some of the cold weather games. All right, so as you can see on the screen, these are the opponents. We do not have the official schedule. The official schedule drops 1 week from today on May 14th. Okay, but we do have the home and away opponents for the Dolphins in 2025. They're posted on the screen. They're also scrolling at the bottom of the screen, whatever way you prefer to look at them. So I would love for you to know, just based on this, your gut reaction, how many wins and losses. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to kind of go one at a time and tell you what I think will happen in the results of each of those games. Like I said, this is definitely subject to change. My thoughts will be subject to change probably all the way up until game time of some of these actual games. But just on, so we're going to do the home games first, and I'm going to post my thoughts down in the comments, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are first. So we're going to just go straight down in order on this list. Don't think there's anything special about this list other than how the teams were chosen. Of course, you will face your division rivals twice, one home game, one road game. And then everybody else is based on how you finish and how you're going to face another division from the NFC. You're going to face another division from the AFC. And then the rest of the ones have to do with teams that were roughly your ability level in another division across the board. It's kind of a complicated formula. We can dive into it more if you want. Just let me know. Okay, so home games. Number 1, Buffalo Bills. Loss. Okay, I'm assuming we're going to lose both these games to the Bills. So again, this is just projecting the record, but the Dolphins have not shown any sort of ability to be able to hang with the Buffalo Bills at this point in time. Certainly we can hope and dream. I think the one way that the Dolphins have a chance is if this Bills game against the Dolphins gets scheduled in Miami super early in the year, like if this is a early September and an afternoon game, then there's a chance. If you remember back in the day when the Patriots would play the Dolphins, a lot of times the Dolphins could beat the Patriots if we got a home game against the Patriots in the daytime, say in early September, where kind of the teams are not fully conditioned yet, and we have that extra advantage, of course, how the sideline is set up in Miami, and with the way all of that goes. So I think there is an opportunity possibly for the Dolphins to steal one, but I'm going to say under, just without having any dates and times on a neutral field, I'm going to say, or on a home field, but it just doesn't matter. Against the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to assume the Buffalo Bills are going to sweep. Okay, number 2, it's going to be the New England Patriots. Now, I am certainly always cautious about other teams that have down years, but I am going to say that we should and will win our home game against the New England Patriots. I do think the Patriots will not be quite as bad as in previous seasons, but they do not look like a team that's fully put everything together yet. Again, when in the year you face some of these teams matters a whole lot, what injuries are and different things. That'll be kind of an interesting thing. The Jets twice, the Browns, 1 or 2 lucky wins, my prediction for the Fins. Yeah, I'll be probably a little bit higher than you on what my initial, but yeah, of course, the Steelers just traded George Pickens today. So I think that was today or yesterday, whenever that was. So that maybe makes them The Jets suck. Yeah. So, well, that's actually going to be the third team that we're going to talk about. The third home opponent that the Dolphins have is the New York Jets. I am going to assume that we will win the home game against the Jets. Yep, going to face your dad's team, the Jets, Red Man. Yeah, so I'm going to call that. So then at this point, that would put the Dolphins at a 2-1 record. Again, this is not the schedule of the Dolphins. This is just the home and road opponents that the Dolphins are planning on facing. The full schedule for the Dolphins and every team comes out next week on the 14th. So 1 week from today, you will be finding out which teams well, not which teams, but when you're facing each team. Which, again, I think, especially for the Dolphins, it maybe matters more than a lot of other teams. Hopefully, the Dolphins draft has gotten them a little bit tougher on the line, so we won't panic just because we're in a cold weather game. All right, number 4. Fourth home game is the Baltimore. I don't know why I'm not just copying and pasting. Why am I not just being simple? Work smarter, not harder, right? Here we go. Yeah, it's not the schedule yet, but these teams are the teams that they're going to be facing. So this is home game number 4. Is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. And again, these can be in any order, so we're just going solely off of this. But the Baltimore Ravens are the cream of the crop in the AFC. You know, if it were not for Patrick Mahomes, I certainly think Lamar Jackson would have multiple Super Bowl wins at this point in time. But they keep doing that. So I mean, I'd say the Patriots going to be a lot better. I do think if that home game, again, a lot of these are kind of hinging on when the Dolphins get these games. Redman, this is not a schedule. I'm telling you, this is not a schedule. This is just opponents. Okay, the full schedule drops next week. So just want to be clear on that. So everybody who's watching on live or replay, not the schedule. This is just opponents and the full schedule and when you face these teams, that's going to come out. Okay, but the Ravens will be a loss. That would then put the Dolphins at this point in time at 2-2 with losses to the Bills and the Ravens and wins against the Patriots and the Jets. Again, this is just my projection. But midnight, again, I haven't dug super deep into every single team. I do think if the Dolphins catch our opponents, and it just tends to be no matter how good or no matter how bad the teams are, I just always assume a split under most circumstances. The caveat here, when Brady was in town, I never assumed a split. I always assumed 2 losses against Brady. And now that Josh Allen is in town, I always assume 2 losses against the Bills. In the end, I generally will almost always assume with the current setup, whether it be Brady or Josh Allen, that the Dolphins will go basically 2-4 against division opponents. That's what I write into the schedule until the Dolphins prove otherwise. So I'm going to, where you give the Dolphins 2 wins against the Jets. Yeah, well, I'm basing it even assuming a healthy Tua at this point. I do not think this team is better than last year's team at the start of the season. I certainly don't think it's as good as 2 years ago team. So I'm even assuming a healthy Tua, and I'm still not seeing a winning season yet. Now they could surprise coming out of camp. I think Quinn Ewers is actually kind of a wild card, not to take over the spot for Tua, but I do think Quinn Ewers is a wild card to push Tua, that he will have to be on his game. And it's probably my favorite draft pick that the Dolphins made. I do like, in general, the positions that the Dolphins drafted. All right, so home opponent number 4 is the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, we're assuming health here. Obviously, as injuries and different things happen, it drastically changes the football season. So, I try not to project injury into my projections. I'm not putting any money on any of this stuff. This is just gut reaction. So I'm going to assume Joe Burrow is going to be healthy. Everybody's going to be healthy. Even though we know it's never is a football team fully healthy. So Cincinnati Bengals, we're going to put that as a loss, even as a home game. I do think that's a game where the Dolphins could play tough. And, there's a potential for a shootout there that could possibly work, but I'm going to assume that will be a loss. All right. Now, I'm not super familiar with the NFC South standings from last year, so I want to look into that before I project a little bit. Again, knowing that teams have changed and players and rosters have changed and different things, I just kind of want to see overall because, again, this is not my forte, the NFC South. So last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finished at 10-7. The Falcons finished at 8-9. Panthers finished at 5-12. Saints finished at 5-12. Okay, so that is the NFC South. So here's what I'm going to make the assumption here. I am going to make the assumption, again, without super deep diving, I'm going to make the assumption for this one here, the New Orleans Saints at home. We're going to call this one a win. Now, I might be over under projecting at midnight. You know a little bit more about the NFC South than I do. So I definitely value any of your feedback. But I'm going to project the Saints as a win. I do think, even though they're both a Southern team, I think that there's a home field advantage. And I'm basically going to be just predicting splits, home splits. I think the Buccaneers obviously are a better team. And there's not going to be any sort of significant home field advantage for the Dolphins against the Buccaneers. I would assume that the Buccaneers, it's going to be like a home game for the Buccaneers. It's not that long of a travel and different things. So, yeah, and that's what I figured. Like, we should be able to beat the Saints, and then I'm going to figure that we'll pull off one of the Falcon or Panther wins. We probably won't win both, but I think this team is talented enough to do that. So that would then put the Dolphins record at 3-3 with a Saints win. Okay, we're going to follow this up. Next is Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to put that one as a loss. Again, I think until proven otherwise, the Buccaneers are a better team than the Dolphins. And again, the only thing I would say about this Dolphins schedule is the Dolphins play some of the better teams at home. It seems like in previous years, a lot of our better teams that we face have been road games. And I look at our road schedule, I would have to imagine you're going undefeated. Hey, that's fine. I'll throw you a bone. I'll give us the road win against the Falcons instead of the Panthers. We'll help you out midnight. But when I look at the overall of the away opponents for the Dolphins, this is probably the least scary set of away opponents. We have 0 cross country. Now, I'm not trusting us against the Browns or the Steelers in a cold weather game because I don't trust us, but I'm also going to assume they're not going to give us back-to-back cold weathers. So again, I'm just kind of playing the odds a little bit, and we'll dive in more next week when we have the actual dates because that will play in more. But we're going to call this Buccaneers game a loss, and that would put the Dolphins at 3-4. And you're gonna see here, this is gonna go downhill really quick the way I see the rest of this playing out overall. So then you're gonna have the Chargers game. I'm gonna call that a loss. I think Herbert is somewhat equally disappointing as it is to Tua. I think both of them have underachieved relative to the expectations for different reasons. However, I do think the Chargers are much closer to busting over the top with Harbaugh than the Dolphins are with McDaniel. Again, if you want to talk about the advantage here, the advantage the Dolphins have is that this is a home game. The Chargers have to go cross country. So I do give, under certain circumstances, again, we'll see when this game actually is. There are circumstances where the West Coast team will do it. So I don't have strong feelings on a lot of this stuff midnight. I'm kind of more playing the odds in general. So next we're going to go Commanders. Oh, so that should be a 3-5. And by the way, I'm also assuming with these 9 home games, I'm assuming one of these is going to be in a foreign country that's not truly a home game too. So that's going to play in. So if you put like the Dolphins, if they make Dolphins Chargers be a game in Europe, then any advantage that the Dolphins have by playing the Chargers as the home team is completely neutralized by playing in Europe because the Dolphins are horrible playing in Europe. All right. But there might be other circumstances where it would be beneficial. So, for example, if I'm trying to think of a team like, so the Buccaneers, if somehow we get the Buccaneers game and that ends up being a Europe game, that I would actually say that might be better because the Dolphins actually have a better fan base, I would assume. They have a pretty decent European fan base. I don't know why, but they do tend to show out. All right. Washington Commanders is going to be a loss. I believe in Jaden Daniels. I think that they're a strong team. I think that they probably would be favorites for the NFC East. And I don't see that this team is really able to stop them. at this point in time. Again, we're going to know a lot more once everything goes down and we get more schedule stuff and once we actually see the team on the field. But we're going to put that as a loss. So I've got the Dolphins going 3-6. 3-6 on it. And by the way, this is my ideal for these. I think every single team, since we have this 17-team schedule, I think every team should get 8 true home games, 8 true road games, and play 1 neutral site game. And I think you could do a whole lot with those neutral site games. You could bring those games to college football stadiums. So, for example, you could do something like this is for example, but you could do like Chiefs and Broncos, and you could do it in Nebraska, right? So you could pick a spot that's kind of equal for both teams and gives another group of fans the ability to go see a game. Because could you imagine you play, like Chiefs Broncos and play it in Nebraska in that huge stadium? Or I'm trying to think of other ones that you could do. You don't want it to be like that. Maybe not the best because you don't want to take away one of those rivalry games, a home and home. But find some games like this. So, for example, you could do. Let me take from this Dolphins schedule. You take a non-natural rival, but in the same thing. So you could do like the Buccaneers and Dolphins game. If you could put that, say, in Orlando or something like that. Yeah, well, once you get to 18 games, then it doesn't matter. But I feel like you should either have every team just have a neutral game that's determined by a coin toss, because it really doesn't matter. The only advantage to home field advantage in football is the fan base. So if as soon as you lose the fan base as a thing, so yeah, exactly. You could do what could you do? You could do the Saints, and because you don't want it to be like the division rivals that face each other twice every year. You want those to be a home and home. But if you had Saints and Dolphins, right? Well, you have that game this year, right? Saints and Dolphins in Alabama. That's good. Like that's a good enough location. It's both teams can travel. It exposes more fans that wouldn't get to it. I really feel like there's an underutilization of college football games. And, I think eventually you're going to end up with a European division. I just think that that's the direction we're going to go ultimately. But anyway, point here, Washington Commanders, we're going to call that a loss. All right, we're going to try to fly through these divisional opponents because you know where I'm at on all of these. I've assumed wins at home against the Patriots and the Jets, so we're going to assume Buffalo Bills on the road is a loss. We're assuming that both games are going to be a loss to the Bills. We're going to assume Patriots on the road is going to be a loss, and we're going to assume Jets on the road is going to be a loss. Okay, so, and again, I'm not saying that the Dolphins can't beat the Jets in New York, but I'm also saying the Dolphins also could just as easily lose to the Jets at home. Okay, so we're just for matter of averages and the way I simply think about these things, this is how I would put those games. I'm just going to assume they're going to lose both games to the Bills. They're going to win one against the Patriots. They're going to lose one against the Patriots. They're going to win one against the Jets, lose one against the Jets. Now, they may end up with slightly different outcomes. Like they might sweep the Jets and get swept by the Patriots. They might steal one from the Bills and lose 2 to the Patriots. Like it could all play out in a different way. But I think, yeah. So I try to build in at least a little bit of a buffer for disappointment here. So anyway, at this point in time, before we get to any of the other opponents' road games, we're at 3-9. All right. So, like I said, I'm a flip a coin here. But we'll call this one, we'll call the Atlanta Falcons a win on the road. Again, you could just as easily, I think, call the Panthers a win on the road. I think there's a good chance because they're short drive games, like, yes, they're away games, but it probably hurts the Dolphins the least. No matter what time of the year, Carolina's never going to be super cold. Of course, Atlanta's a dome. I think the Dolphins can pull off a win in one of these games. I doubt that they'll win both. But so we're going to put that one at 4-9. My gut kind of says that they could probably win this Panthers game, but if they do, then they're probably going to lose the Falcons game. So again, it's complete toss up here. We're just kind of looking at this at 4-10. All right. Now, a lot of these games here when we play Cleveland, is this going to be a December game or is this going to be an October game? Obviously, could play a difference here, but I'm going to assume a win over the Browns. and that would put us at 5-10. Initially when I saw this, I was thinking Steelers as a win or as a loss with them trading Pickens. And again, this is subject to change, but if they go into the season with a quarterback room that they have, then maybe with the Pickens trade, maybe we can sneak this win. Now, the odds that we don't get one of these two games in December is pretty low. The NFL is going to give us a cold weather December game, but for today, we'll go with that. That would put us at 6-10. And let me see, what did the Colts do last year? I just want to make sure I'm not vastly. They're 8-9. So this is kind of a toss-up game here. But since it is home for the Colts, we'll call this. And you can call, if you want to call the Steelers won a loss and the Colts won a win, I can basically see that as a push either way. But 6-11, I can see the argument for 7-10 if you think the Dolphins can pull off 2 wins against the Jets or pull off 1 win against the Panthers. Like I said, I'll be a little bit more excited to see the actual schedule next week and see when. But I mean, I'm thinking 6-11 here. What do I think is the low end? So if everything falls apart for the Dolphins here, what's our floor? I'm going to say the floor is you're still going to beat one of the Browns, Steelers, or Colts. You'll nab one of those wins. You're going to nab probably one of the Panthers or Falcons wins. You'll nab. You're going to get 2 guaranteed. You'll get 1 win against the AFC East. And then who else? What else are we going to? Let me go back to this. Looking at this schedule here. What else can we do? We'll get one of the AFC South teams at home. So I would say the floor for this team is 4-13. Okay. Yeah, and how some of these position battles come down, that's going to make a difference too. And if there's trades that are made, it'll drastically change everything. So but I'm going to say the floor on this team is 4-13. Now, if we look at the ceiling, I take the hyper optimistic. All right. And try not to be completely insane, but let's just say the ceiling here would be, I still can't see the Dolphins pulling more than 4 wins out of the AFC East. If they beat the Bills, they're going to stumble against the Jets. So let's call them 4-2 against the AFC East. I don't see any wins at the Ravens or hosting the Ravens or the Bengals. Let's give them the Saints. Let's give them the Buccaneers as a slight nod for a home game. So that's 5-6. And let's give them the Chargers if that falls to a providential spot. So that's 7. Let's give them, this is again hyper optimistic. Falcons would be 8, Panthers would be 9, Browns would be 10, and Colts would be 11. I don't think we can take 3 games against the AFC North on the road. I don't see that. So what was my number there? Hold on. I already lost count. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the ceiling for this team is like 11-6. So yeah, 7-10 is, that was like I ran over this during the baseball stream earlier midnight, and that was the first calculation I did. And I don't know what I did different. Maybe I might have given both the Falcons and Panthers away games. But I do want to see when and where all these games are going to be. Because we know in general the Dolphins don't play well on night games. They don't play well in cold weather. They don't play well in Europe. And so who they get could. So, like, for example, if we're going to Europe, I just want to play the Ravens in Europe. It's like, if that's where we're going to give up, then we might as well just give it up to one of the better teams. the last thing I want to do is play the Jets in Europe and lose our home game to the Jets in Europe. So yeah, I would say if you run the scenario of this team a bunch of times, 7-10, 8-9, just the same as the Dolphins always are. That's what I see, which is not to be like a naysayer or anything negative, but yeah, Red Man, but you don't understand. This is rivalry stuff. It's not about trash or not. It's also about this team continually finds ways to lose games they should easily win. Just for some comparison of some of the joint teams last year, I'm just going to run through this. So the Dolphins were 8-9 last season. Okay, so I'll give you some of the comparisons. We hosted the Bills early in the season and we lost 31-10. Now, I understand there's injuries in here, but it doesn't matter. You got it. Losses are losses. Okay. We did win a game early in the season at the Patriots and when we won late in the season at the Patriots. So you're like, okay, that's great. And then we won against the Jets at home. And then on the road at the end of the season, we lose to the Jets. Why? Because this is what we do. And then we lost both games. So again, we finished 3-3 in the division. So this is what the Dolphins do. The Dolphins manage to find ways to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. And it's a very consistent thing. And again, in December, we went to the Browns and beat them 20-3. And then the next week we go to the Jets and we lose. It's like this team just hasn't figured out how to break through. So other common opponents, and again, I get it 1 year over the next is tough, but we played at the Colts last year. We lost 16-10. We lost both games to the Bills. Hope is pain. Yep. Oh yeah, hope is the worst thing. We beat the Browns at the Browns last year. So that's a common opponent from last year. There was another one I saw. Who else did we? Bills, Seahawks, Titans. Maybe it was the Colts. Was that what they had seen? And that's what's frustrating about this team is like the Dolphins actually had a pretty nice stretch run here. If you look, the problem was they dug themselves into a super deep hole. But they went after they're losing on the road to the Bills by 3, right? I mean, the Dolphins were Tua not being hurt away from making the playoffs last year, to be fair. Like, obviously he got hurt, so you can't do it. But it's not like they got curb stomped in every game. They got curbs. So I think Tua got hurt in the Bills game. Let me see. Is that right? Yeah. So Tua got hurt in the Bills game. And then they go on to lose to the Seahawks and the Titans. Okay. So, but even if you call those games out, when did Tua return? The loss that hurt the Dolphins, I think, big time last year was losing at the Colts. That was the last game that Tua missed. And I think, and then Tua comes back and they lose by 1 to the Cardinals. The next week they go to Buffalo, lose by 3 at Buffalo. Like it was that close, right? And if they win the Colts game, maybe Tua has enough in there. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be hard, right? I don't like to project what any player should do, but it's got to be hard. It's the game you love. It's the game you've played. You've always wanted to make it to this level. So I get it why guys don't want to give it up. It's hard. It's scary here too. It's what it is. But yeah, I mean, realistically, so that you have that, and then this was the stretch after that Bills loss. They lost to the Bills by 3 on the road. This was the stretch they did. This was probably like October, November. They went across country to the Rams and won. Then they faced the Raiders and won. Then they faced the Patriots and won. And then that Packers game, so that might have been November. They lost at the Packers. I think that was the Thanksgiving or Black Friday game, whatever it was. 30-17. I think that game was worse than the score looked, if I remember right. Then they beat the Jets, lost to the Texans, beat the 49ers, went on the road and beat the Browns. So there was actually a really good stretch in there, 3, 4, 5, 6, where they went 6-2, and their only 2 losses were road losses to playoff teams. But the 2 games that hurt the most, for sure, well, 3 games. I'll give you 3 games that hurt the most. Losing at the Jets at the end of the season. I think at that point the Dolphins had kind of quit. And then losing to the Colts with Tyler Huntley and not having a quarterback that could put up points, especially after you barely beat the Patriots the week before. The fact that they couldn't back it up with a win at the Colts hurt, and then not being able to beat the Cardinals in Tua's return. It was just that's. I mean, you change those 3 games around, and if it's 11-6 season, then the Dolphins get blown out in the first round of the playoffs instead of getting knocked out before the playoffs. Basically, Redman, your NFL team is going to, in most circumstances, your NFL team will go as well as your quarterback goes. Are there exceptions? Absolutely. There are always exceptions to every rule. But as a general rule of thumb, you will go as far as your quarterback takes you in any given season. And do you need defense? Yes, you need defense. You need special teams? Yes, you need special teams. But ultimately, you're going to see consistently in the NFL, the teams that have the quarterbacks playing the best are the teams that are winning in general. All the time? No. In general, yes. So as a general rule of thumb or general principle, yeah, that's what you're looking for. As a specific, well, can a team with a worse quarterback beat a team with a better quarterback? Of course. Any given Sunday, anything can happen. Yep. Ravens winning with Trent Dilfer, for sure. And there are exceptions, but even if you look at just the conglomerate of the teams that make the playoffs, even if you want to consider the playoffs a complete crapshoot, if you want a shot at making the playoffs, you're probably going to see quarterbacks that have been playing well throughout the season. It doesn't mean you're a Hall of Fame quarterback. It just means that you're playing well. Or occasionally you get the team that is just the ultimate run team defense built. But there's a reason why consistently you see names like Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and fill in the blank year after year after year. There will always be exceptions to it, but as a general principle, your team is going to flounder till you figure out your quarterback situation, unless you can put together an all-time, squad or whatever. Yep, exactly. Defense can carry you in certain circumstances. But I would say there's probably even games that season, Midnight, where you could probably look back and you could say, wow, even though Peyton wasn't at his best, he still probably won some games for them with his quarterback smarts that maybe got him into the right playoff position or whatever. Just kind of curious, what year was that? Peyton Manning final season. Is that 2015? Yeah, so let's go Peyton Manning 2015 stats. Because I'm always curious about these things because, as we get further away from things, we forget the specifics and we remember the generals. Okay. But yeah, I mean, you can see overall, he only had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 10 games. Manning only played 10 games that season and not much. They brought him in a little bit in the January 3rd game just to kind of get him ready for the playoffs. He had one game that you would say is pretty good. 324 passing yards against the Lions, where they won against the Lions. But yeah, you can definitely see that was not. Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis, right? That's where you can do it. But in the playoffs, so here's where here's the thing. Let me just share this for you as people are trying to try and teach Redman a little bit here. What he did not do in the playoffs was make mistakes in general. So let me just show you this really quick. This is right. Manning knew he could still be a gunslinger if he needed to, and they could still win games. So if you go down here, first of all, to the early part of the season, right? Peyton Manning only had 9 touchdown passes the entire season. So that's part of it here. And you can see even in the games like the Kansas City game, he had 3 interceptions. Or sorry, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But you can see 3 interceptions against Cleveland, 4 interceptions against Kansas City. You know, you can see can't forget to get off the bus for the Super Bowl. Yep. But when you look here in the playoffs, what does he do? 21 for 37, 222 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Against the Patriots, 20 for 8 or 20, they win 20 to 18, go 17 for 32, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Mets Life, how's it going? We're just looking at the Miami Dolphins home and away teams for the upcoming season. Doing a little football talk here on a Wednesday night. And then against the Panthers in the Super Bowl, 1 interception, no touchdowns, 13 for 23, 141 yards. So yeah, there are the exceptions, but even with those exceptions, the reason why it works is because the quarterback doesn't make mistakes. So that's about the only way that it works. But yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point, Midnight, for sure. Let me bring that home and away teams back up for the Dolphins, for those of you who guys are wanting to see that. Yeah, I hope you're doing well, Mets Life. Good win for the Mets today to take the series. So that is pretty exciting. Pretty exciting for the Mets to hopefully turn this ship around that was feeling like a little bit of a sinking ship for the last couple of days. Let's go beat those Cubbies. Take 2 out of 3 from Chicago. I'll be happy with that. So yeah, that's what we got. If there's any other team, have you looked up the Panthers home and away? And Mets Life, do you have a football team? We can look up their home and aways. If you want to do a quick projection, let me know. If you guys are in the chat, or if you're watching this on replay, let me know if there's any other team. I can just give you my quick off the top of the head update. Tyreek Hill has screws taken out of his wrist. Well, that's good. That's got to be a good sign. Unless it means things are going to fall apart. Let's do Carolina Panthers. All right, let's go. We'll look. We've got time. If anybody has Dolphins questions too, I'm not ignoring you, but if we got any questions for anything, feel free. Hop in. 2025 home and away. See if I can find. Find the link here. Well, we're facing. What if I click on the Panthers? Going undefeated no matter what. Trying to find. Oh, here we go. Is this it? All right, here it is. I'm going to give you my off the top of the head. Give you my off the top of the head. We're going to bring Panthers. This is Carolina Panthers home and away. Again, rivalry-wise, I'm without diving super deep. I'm just going to assume home and away splits for the NFC South. Again, I might not be 100% correct, but we'll assume the split there. Home, you get the Bills at home. I'm going to call that a loss for you guys. That's 3 and 4. You get the Rams at home. Hope you're not playing for a draft. What do the Rams look like this year? I don't even know what. Let's assume you can win. I'm going to give you one of the Rams and the Seahawks at home because they're both having to travel cross country. You should be able to win one of those two, assuming you're improved. So we'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. That's going to put you at 4 and 5. I gave you the win over the Dolphins, so I'll give it to you here, 5 and 5. I'm going to give you a loss to the Cowboys. Sorry, I know that hurts, but 5 and 5. You're away. Can you beat the Patriots away? Yes. And the Jets away. Can you beat both of them on the road? I don't know if you can beat both of them on the road. Let me give you 6 and 6. Cardinals and 49ers. Can you beat both of them on the road? Yeah, you can make adjustments there as you see, but can you beat the I don't think you can beat the 49ers and the Cardinals on the road. So I'm gonna give you 7-7. You can beat the Jaguars. It's 8-7. Hold on, I gotta be missing something here. What did I miss? 3-3, 3-4, 4-5, 5. I got you 5-6, 5-6-7, 7-8. Okay, you can beat the Jaguars. It's 8-8, and you're going to lose to the Packers away. That's 8-9. Without diving too much, I think that's, you know, there's probably a lot of teams that I would probably slate to finish right around 8-9. So I don't know if that's too optimistic or pessimistic, but just off the top of my head, seeing what I'm seeing, feeling what I'm feeling. I do think that the benefit you have, yeah, 8-9, 9-8. If you're thinking, and the difference is if you're thinking you're gonna sweep the Saints and the Falcons, that boosts you up a little bit. I could, losing both games going across country, that's certainly possible, but assuming that there's continued progress forward, I think that there's a possibility. 17-0. 17-0. There is yeah. So that's what we got. If anybody else has any other thoughts or comments, 20-0 with a Super Bowl. Might if you face the Dolphins near the end of the season and you're undefeated, you know the Dolphins are going to show out for the pride of 1972. Even though we couldn't stop the Patriots the one year, we had to rely on the Giants to stop them in the Super Bowl. But all right, well, that's what we got. Again, if you got any other questions, thoughts, where do you think the Dolphins are going to finish, at least based on this? We'll do a full schedule reveal hopefully next Wednesday night. When it comes out, we'll be able to do a full schedule reveal, cover all of that for you as well. So my rough prediction, again, for those of you who missed it or just tuning in at the end, just on the first go through, I think I finished with 6-11. That was the rough prediction. The very first time I looked at it, I think I came up with 7-10. Say the floor for a really rough season would be like 4-13. And I've got 11-6 if everything kind of breaks our way. So. But when I look at schedules, I always like to look at them in chunks because I just have so little confidence of the Dolphins being consistent. I have slightly more confidence of the Dolphins being able to win one of two games in this scenario. And but even if I predict them to sweep one team, they might get swept by another team, and they just tend to find ways to lose games that they should win. And as soon as the game starts, you can almost always tell, like, yep, they didn't show up today. So see that. See if the Dolphins make good sushi. Come on, midnight. Come on. Well, I do appreciate each and every one. That being said, I think we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to try to make one more video tonight. 3 up and 3 down for baseball teams. I might add in players as well. Yeah, so I'm going to try to do that, but I appreciate each and every one of you as you come on through. Whether you're watching live or on replay, please hit that like, hit that subscribe, and we are looking forward to the full schedule release next week. Until then, let's go Miami, baby. Have a great night. Large midnight. Large.